Boots, what it is.
What's happening?
How you doing?
I'm doing all right.
It's good to see you.
Good seeing you. Well, I don't see you, but
no, I'm somewhere else.
Good to be seen.
So, for those of you who don't know, Mr. Boots Riley, he, again, I first kind of came to his work as a musician, the illustrious MC, the amazing storyteller of the Coup, who you may have noticed in the ending credits is responsible for the soundtrack. Say something to us about, can you hear me?
Yeah, now I can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, cool.
Okay, now you're good?
Yeah.
All right, so I was just giving a very brief introduction, but it actually, with this new venture, with this new creative project and all that I know you already have in mind, tell us who you are. How do you introduce yourself now?
Let's see. I'm Boots Riley. I'm from Oakland, California. I usually don't really tell too much about, I try to, I don't know. It depends. If I'm doing a radio show, I might say I'm Boots Riley from the Coup. Or if I'm plugging the movie, I'm Boots Riley, the writer and director of Sorry to Bother You. It keeps freezing, so unless you're frozen.
Can everybody wave at him to let him know if we're frozen or not? Are we frozen? Do you see folks?
I see, actually, I see you right now. They have me on the thing, so I see you.
Okay.
So there you go. You're not frozen. It just every now and then it stops, so that's it.
All right, well, we're going to get to questions right away then so that we can hopefully take advantage of the good moments of technology.
All right. Okay.
But I just want to big up again, if you don't know the Coup, get familiar. This is a major, major kind of storytelling apparatus that was already in motion well before this feature film came to be. But I'm interested in hearing your questions. In advance of that, while someone is getting ready, please raise your hand if you're interested in asking a question. I want to ask you, Boots, how you might link your storytelling as an MC with your film writing. What's the relationship? Can you hear me?
Okay, I heard part of the question, but I think that you were asking how the storytelling as an MC is connected to the filmmaking.
Exactly.
And I started out in film school and at San Francisco State and dropped out because we got a record deal. And so I've always been involved in telling stories. And even before I was doing music and film school, I was involved in theater. My grandmother ran the Oakland Ensemble Theater. I was part of the Black Repertory Group, which was in Berkeley. I wrote plays in school. And it's all just been one creative mesh. I think at a certain point, definitely in my life, and in a lot of artists' life, what you call yourself as an artist really has to do with the identity of how you want to be seen. So you cut out certain things from that creative life, like, you want to be seen as a rapper. So you're not like, oh, I actually did theater and I was in film school and things like that. But because I wanted to make films, and songs were much cheaper than making films and still are, I decided to do the storytelling through long songs. Probably our most popular songs are a couple of like 7-minute long story songs. One of them called Fat Cats and Bigger Fish, and one of them called Me and Jesus the Pimp in the 79 Granada Last Night. And Fat Cats and Bigger Fish are part of a trio of songs which tell one story. So story has always been a big part of it for me, and I think also a big part of how you relate ideas about the world in general, like in an effective way. From all the organizers that I've met in my life that were very effective, there were people that told anecdotes about things they've been through, and in those anecdotes shared their insights about the world, which contained the contradictions in the story and the ironies, which were often very funny, but that pointed out their analysis. So that's always been a part of what I do.
Can you say something quickly, or less quickly, however long it takes, about that relationship to politics, around organizing locally in Oakland, in the Bay Area, but also your big questions, your big critiques of capitalism, for example, so your song 5 Million Ways to Kill a CEO, right? Just one example of many of the critiques that you've shot at capitalism throughout your career. So can you say something about your relationship as an artist to those organizing communities and political themes, and then how they reveal themselves in the film?
Well, first, I think that to be a good artist of any kind, you have to have something you're more passionate about than the art itself. If your passion is making art, you're going to make very shitty art because you're not really going to have anything to guide the aesthetic. And I got into making art because I had something to say, and and what I have to say, I try to make sure that it's guided by folks that are organizing, so that I even understand what the questions are that need to be asked. Because sometimes you can be an artist that is very well-meaning and wants their art to be part of something, but because you're not connected to people that are actually organizing, or you're not doing it yourself, you just ask questions that really, with your art, or you talk about points that are really irrelevant to the organizing that's going on. And often, if you're not involved with organizations, your whole idea of what's wrong with the world often is guided by mass media or other forms of media that aren't in connection with that. So, for instance, in the 90s, a lot of what was called conscious rap, which would now maybe be called woke or something, got very interested in how Black folks had cultures that were messing themselves up, how the Black family was destroyed and things like that. And some of these were myths that were created, that whoever they were created by, they were put forward by the media, and to make it seem like our poverty was a result of all the bad choices and our bad culture that we had. And so many artists that even thought of themselves as conscious or rebellious echoed these things because they weren't actually involved with organizations that were doing the work to actually try to change the way things are. They were acting out of a sense of wanting to be an artist that talked about the right things. And so they grabbed from the information that you could get from high school or after school programs or the media.
Right. Nonprofit.
And so in my work, I often try to inspire people by first not having the viewpoint that you are the person that's fucked up. It's that we are in this situation because there is we have an economic relationship to power, and all of that causes cultural cultural reactions and kind of gives us a limited amount of choices. So I think that goes through my work, through those songs. That's why those songs are more outwardly recognizable critiques of capitalism. However, I think a lot of my songs have that viewpoint behind them, and so and I think some of the even more personal songs have that viewpoint behind them. And with this movie, definitely, that viewpoint shows through. While you never hear someone giving a general critique of capitalism through the whole thing, the whole way the world is set up just ends up being that critique.
Right. I mean, you definitely take other approaches in your music that is not in your face, I'm going to feed you a declarative sentence. I mean, one of my favorite songs is Nowalators. And you talk about teenage pregnancy. You ain't shit without a man to guide you. If your mama tried to feed you that, she lied too. Helping, right, people again to question all of those myths, stereotypes, pathologies that begin to inform how people think about themselves instead of actually understanding it as part of a structure. So that's right on. I mean, being able to find the right answers. As you said, Boots means asking the right questions. So with that token, let's ask some informed questions of our guest. Who has a question?
Who would you say, as an artist, influenced you the most when creating this film?
So, one thing that's good about having been an artist in music for 20-something years is you realize the thing you don't want. You want to do two things. You do want to be okay with wearing your influences on your sleeve. But you don't want there to be just one artist who you do that with. So for instance, I love Prince. However, when you find that one artist that really is overwhelmingly influenced by Prince and can make a song that sounds almost exactly like Prince and all that, you might as well listen to Prince instead. But if you have an artist that is influenced by Prince and influenced by Jello Biafra and influenced by Marvin Gaye and Miles Davis and The Clash, it might sound a little bit more interesting and it becomes something new. So there are a lot of people that influenced me with this film, and I would say Emir Kusturica has some films, Black Cat, White Cat, and Underground, which has all this chaos going on, and but with some beauty to it. I think there are films by Michael Cimino, Heaven's Gate and Deer Hunter, which have this wonderful crowd work that gives it this depth and feeling. There's a scene in there in my film which is very influenced by a scene from a Paul Schrader movie called Mishima. So the scene where Cassius is looking at the elevator and there's this kind of trombone shot that closes in on him as he's being drawn to it is really inspired by a shot that happens in Paul Schrader's Mishima when the character is looking at the Temple of the Golden Pavilion. I could go on. Kubrick, Spike Jonze, Charlie Kaufman, Michel Gondry, Terry Gilliam, you know, there's so many people. I mean, obviously Spike Lee. I mean, I think that's the one that's least obvious in this film, but he inspired me to be a filmmaker. So, I mean, I purposely like draw from a lot of different areas. So I don't think that there's one overwhelming one, but I think different people will take different influences from it.
Bruce Riley, Robin Kelly. It's great to see
Hey,
you.
what's happening?
How you doing, man? This is
All right.
This is such a treat, and I have two. This is such a treat. I have just two very basic questions. Can you talk about the genesis of the screenplay? And then the second question is, what's the next film?
So I started writing this in 2011 and finished it in 2012. Well, when I say finished, I got to the end the first time in 2012, and then knew that I had to kind of raise a ruckus around it. So I made an album that was inspired by the screenplay to try to get some interest going in it, and that didn't work. But I still had to put out the album and tour it. So then in 2014, I ran into Dave Eggers, who is a writer and publishes and runs a publishing company called McSweeney's. I got it to him because at the time I was gonna just put it out on the internet, and I wanted him to look at it and give me some notes for tightening it up. And he said, well, this is one of the best unproduced screenplays I've ever read. Let me put it out on McSweeney's. So he put it out on McSweeney's as its own paperback book and bound with the McSweeney's Quarterly, and it went out there. And his whole thing was like, man, everybody in the industry reads this, so you'll get it out there. So I got reinvigorated and joined the San Francisco Film Society's Filmmaker in Residence program, went to Sundance, where I ran into your illustrious host there, and she introduced me to some folks from Sundance Film Festival. And there I also I met one person, Ann Lai from the Feature Film Project, who invited me to apply to the Sundance Writers Lab. I went through that, and I got in, went through that, and of course the Writers Lab adds a little prestige to it, so people are stopped being like, because as someone working in music, when you tell people that you're doing a script, they're like, yeah, okay, cool, yeah, you're a rapper, you want to do a movie, of course you probably want to do a shoe line and open up a chain of restaurants, so nobody takes it seriously. But I think once Sundance got on board with it, it started being taken seriously, and people started actually reading the script. Also with Dave Eggers co-signed on there as well. So then went through in 2015 did the Directors Lab. So yeah, it's been a long time. I first started writing it in 2011. When I finished this script, Lakeith Stanfield, who plays the lead, had not yet been cast in his first movie. So that tells you, like, someone you may be writing a script and your lead may still be deciding whether or not they want to act.
But then on the other side of it, bring a whole different audience now to the film that it's out, right? Because he's been in Get Out, he's been on Atlanta, he's been doing these big things. So now when your film is out, it's adding a whole different dimension to the release. Other questions?
Okay,
Okay, so first of all, I am a film student right now at San Diego State University, and I am really enjoying it. One of the things I noticed while writing while watching this movie, I noticed that almost had a very unpleasant feeling, which I'm assuming was totally intentional. I really liked the way that was pulled off and the way all that was done. And I've had screenplays before that I've written for myself for certain classes where I've had, like, I kind of was thinking of it maybe being a horror movie or a comedy, and then had to switch, or, you know, genres would have switched somehow, and I had to redevelop the idea. So when you were writing the screenplay, was this originally supposed to be a horror film, you know, on the same level as Get Out, or was it always meant to be a comedy, and it was supposed to have that sort of feel to it, if that makes sense?
Well, just like in my music, I don't know how to be in any one genre in the first place. So, but it wasn't supposed to be like Get Out. Like I said, I wrote it and we published it before Get Out even came out. But I don't worry about those rules, because I think some of those rules those sorts of things exist in music as well as film. Some of those rules are great. Like, it's great for an artist to have rules to dance inside of. You know, it's a rhythm. You can do that, and you can. Let's say if you're doing a heist film, like, someone can watch a heist film and be like, okay, this is the part where they figured out how to break in, and soon is going to come the part where there's a complication. So right about here, I could go to the bathroom because I'm not going to miss anything. I can come right back. But even beyond denigrating it down to that level, it's interesting for the viewer as well, because you get to see what that artist does with those rules. But you still get, as a viewer, you get used to it, and you start you start taking it for granted, and you disengage to a certain extent. And I wanted to make something that made people engaged, and that's all. When I wrote this, for the most part, I was taking the journey with Cassius. Did I know it was going to be funny? I probably did, because that's just, even though I'm being very serious right now, that's just the kind of person I am. That's how I express myself often, and I think that's how life is. Like, there's, I find the tone of those really serious dramas to be really false, because I don't think life is like that. But I think maybe some writers worry about what it will seem like, the statement that they're making when they do that. So I knew, knowing myself, I knew that it wouldn't be able to be put into any sort of category. And also, I don't know how to, like, if I would get mad, like, if there was something I really wanted to do and it was just that it makes it go into a different genre, and that's the reason why I can't do it. That's just not how I've done my art in the past.
So being unclassifiable and incredibly hilarious is who he is. It's not just what he's telling you, it's how I experience him, how people experience him. And from the very jump, it was funny. So thank you for that. Thank you for that. One last question.
Hi there. You had so many elements of fantastical storytelling, and I just wanted to ask, through your process of writing your script, was that always your first instance to put in the things that you saw, or was it you finished your story and then thought of the fantastical elements to be plugged in?
I think never was that I finished the story, but I think there's a little bit of both, in the sense that, so for instance, when I got, as I said, I took the journey with Cassius, but when I want to put in bigger ideas, bigger philosophical ideas, There's a couple ways you could do that. You could do it through dialogue, and that's very often heavy-handed. Maybe someone could do that and be better than me at it, but it seemed really heavy-handed when you do that. Or you could do it through making a real-world situation happen that exposed this political reality. And I don't know, that's boring to me and heavy-handed. So I realized for me, what worked was to bend reality. Bend reality bend what we think is reality in the movie so that we think about those points of reality in our real world. So when I wrote that whole speech about the white voice with Danny Glover said, that Langston says, but played by Danny Glover in the movie, it wasn't until that last line that I realized, oh, it's going to be a magic white voice. And I had to think about it. It's where I went there, like, am I really going to do this? What does it mean? Where am I taking people? When he got to the party, the Steve Lift party, I knew that he had to get somewhere low. And I knew that he had to have to be able to look at himself. And so at first, as I was writing the nigga shit part, I thought that was going to be it. And then I thought, wait a minute, he's been selling slaves and doing all of this other shit. Would that be enough? And maybe for some movies it would, but I realized that he had to have some sort of mortal shock that caused him to really see who he was in this world. And for it to really be believable, otherwise it would just get preachy, like, okay, he experienced just he experienced a little bit more racism than what he had been before, and that was just the straw that broke the camel's back. So I thought about what it would be, and that's the point at which it turned into science fiction, right? And right then, and I remember thinking, am I going to do this? Is this where he goes? And it was. And so with all of these things, you then sometimes have to go back and tweak things, because I don't really do much foreshadowing, but I do have things in there that I have it written in a way where everything is up for grabs so that you could believe that this would happen. Like, had it been all the way normal right then and that happened, you'd feel cheated, you know. And there were certain things that I went back and added later, like I realized that talking on the phone is boring. This is after it was made. I realized that talking on the phone is boring, so how do I, punch that up? So that was something I went back and punched up, which was the falling into people's houses. But what I really wanted to do with all of these things, it was more, rather than touching on genres, it was about keeping you on edge, keeping you understanding and engaged with the thing. At a certain point, understanding that you don't know which way this is going to go. And I also, when I wrote that, I knew that some people would hate that. Some people will hate that feeling, because we're taught that this is how a story is supposed to go. And we like that because we're used to it. But I think that to the extent that what I did works, it will inspire other people to try different things, and what we're used to will change. And so I'm fully aware that some people are like, will watch this and be like, this is not what you're supposed to be doing, oh no, he didn't do this, he didn't do that. But I want that feeling.
As the straw that broke the camel's back on an expose of racism and capitalist oppressions. Thank you, Boots. This film is going to provoke so much conversation. It opens July 6th. Please go see it in the theater. And thank you for this time, Boots.
Please, even though there's credit, please don't spoil it for people online. Let people have that same feeling that you had for it. Let them experience that. But please do, if you liked it, tell people about it, because we need the help. It may seem like a lot of people are talking about this, but that's just how social media works. It shows you the things that you're already interested in or that people in your group. But we need help getting it past the cool people and getting it